December 7, 1941, the day that silenced paradise. The calm waves of Pearl Harbor mirrored the rising sun, until the sky itself caught fire. No one knew that within the next 90 minutes, the world order would collapse into chaos, and a new age of war would begin. The Pearl Harbor attack that changed the course of history. The morning began like any other Sunday in Hawaii. Soldiers were enjoying breakfast, ships anchored in still waters, and the American flag fluttered proudly over the harbor. But on the horizon, a dark cloud of fate was approaching. A fleet of Japanese aircraft, gliding silently through the Pacific air. At exactly 7:57 a.m., the first wave of Japanese bombers descended from the clouds. Explosions shattered the morning calm as torpedoes tore through steel hulls. Battleships like the USS Arizona and USS Oklahoma erupted into flames, their decks consumed by infernos. In mere minutes, the heart of America's Pacific Fleet was burning. Commanders scrambled for defenses, but the attack was too swift, too precise. Within just 75 minutes, 20 ships were destroyed, 8 battleships crippled, and over 400 American lives lost. Smoke choked the sky as Pearl Harbor turned into a graveyard of iron and fire. This was not just an attack on a military base. It was an assault on America's spirit. The Japanese sought to cripple the U.S. Navy before it could strike back, believing this would buy them time to seize Asia's oil and resources. But instead, the attack ignited something far more powerful: American fury. That same evening, the world changed. President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed the nation, his voice trembling with controlled rage, calling December 7th a date which will live in infamy. The next day, America declared war on Japan, ending its neutrality and thrusting itself into the deadliest conflict in human history, World War II. Pearl Harbor was not just a tragedy. It was the turning point that awakened a sleeping giant. From the flames of Hawaii rose the might of the United States, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to one of the most devastating decisions ever made: the use of the atomic bomb. Doris Miller's heroism during the Pearl Harbor assault. Amid the chaos of Pearl Harbor's burning decks, a young man named Doris Miller, a cook, not a soldier, would rewrite the meaning of courage. Doris was an African-American sailor serving aboard the USS West Virginia. On that fateful morning, as alarms blared and explosions echoed, he was delivering laundry to the officers' quarters. Moments later, a torpedo ripped through the battleship, throwing Miller off balance. Smoke and panic spread across the deck. Most men ran for cover, but Miller did the opposite. He rushed toward the wounded, carrying injured sailors, even the ship's captain, to safety. Then, seeing an unmanned anti-aircraft gun, Miller made a decision that would echo through history. Despite having no formal weapons training, he took control of the weapon and began firing at the incoming Japanese planes. Each burst from the gun was a roar of defiance. Witnesses later recalled how Miller's aim was deadly accurate. He shot down at least 6 Japanese aircraft before his ammunition ran out. Even as the ship sank beneath the waves, Miller stayed to help the wounded, refusing to abandon his post. In a time when racial segregation still shadowed America, Doris Miller's valor stood as a symbol of unity and heroism. His actions weren't born of rank or command. They came from instinct, humanity, and sheer bravery. For his courage, Miller was later awarded the Navy Cross, becoming the first African American to receive such an honor. His story became a rallying cry across America, proof that heroism knows no color and that courage can rise from the most unexpected hearts. Doris Miller didn't just defend his ship, he defended the idea of what America could be when faced with darkness. Brave, resilient, and indivisible. Japan's expansionist ambitions and the U.S. oil embargo. Before the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan had been waging war across Asia. With limited natural resources, it sought to build an empire fueled by conquest. Its armies had invaded Manchuria, occupied Korea, and spread deep into China. Yet, Japan's ambitions went beyond, toward Southeast Asia's oil-rich territories, especially Indonesia and Malaysia. But these regions were under Western control. British, Dutch, and American, Japan's hunger for oil clashed with American interests in the Pacific. In July 1941, the United States took a drastic step, cutting off Japan's oil supply. This embargo crippled Japan's war machine, leaving it desperate for fuel. 80% of its oil came from America, and without it, Japan's military power would collapse within months. The U.S. offered Japan a choice: withdraw from China, and trade would resume. But Japan viewed this as humiliation, an insult to its pride and empire. Behind closed doors, Japanese leaders began planning a different path. Instead of submission, they would seize what they needed by force. Japan aimed to capture Indonesia's oil fields, but the Philippines, an American colony, stood in its way. Attacking the Philippines meant war with the United States, and war with America meant confronting the mighty Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. Thus, Japan made a fateful decision: to strike first. If they could destroy the American fleet in one blow, they might control the Pacific before the U.S. could recover. It was a bold gamble, one that promised victory but invited devastation. That decision set off a chain reaction that would end not with triumph, but with two atomic clouds rising over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan's hunger for empire, fueled by oil and pride, ultimately brought about its own destruction and reshaped the world forever. America's entry into World War II and retaliation against Japan. When the news of Pearl Harbor reached Washington, the United States was in shock. The next morning, President Roosevelt addressed Congress, declaring war on Japan. Across the country, enlistment offices overflowed with young men ready to serve. Factories roared to life, producing tanks, planes, and ships at an unprecedented rate. America had awakened. What began as a Pacific War soon became a global one. Germany and Italy, Japan's allies, declared war on the United States. Now, the entire world was engulfed in flames. The U.S. fought on two fronts, against the Axis powers in Europe and the Japanese Empire in Asia. In April 1942, America struck back. 16 bombers, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, launched from the USS Hornet and bombed Tokyo. Though the attack caused limited damage, it shattered Japan's illusion of invincibility. It was a message: America would not rest until justice was done. Over the next 3 years, the Pacific became a brutal battleground. Islands like Midway, Guadalcanal, and Iwo Jima became names etched in blood. American forces advanced island by island. At tremendous cost, Japanese soldiers fought with fanatical resolve, refusing to surrender. Civilians, too, suffered immensely under the weight of war. By 1945, America had surrounded Japan, but the Japanese government still refused to surrender. Military leaders prepared civilians for a last stand, a suicidal defense of their homeland. American generals predicted that invading Japan could cost over 1 million Allied lives. With the world wary of endless death, U.S. leaders began considering a weapon unlike any seen before. A device born from science and destruction. The Manhattan Project had produced it in secrecy: the atomic bomb. What began as vengeance for Pearl Harbor was about to end with an act that would forever change humanity's relationship with war and morality. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 6, 1945, at exactly 8:15 a.m., a lone B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, appeared over the skies of Hiroshima. The crew released its deadly cargo, a bomb nicknamed Little Boy. 43 seconds later, the world witnessed the dawn of a new age, the atomic age. A blinding flash engulfed the city. Temperatures soared to 5,000 degrees C, hotter than the surface of the sun. Within seconds, 80% of Hiroshima vanished. Steel melted, buildings vaporized, and tens of thousands of lives were erased in an instant. Those who survived were burned, scarred, and forever haunted. 3 days later, another B-29 Boxcar carried Fat Man, the second atomic bomb, to Nagasaki. At 11:00 am, the city exploded into light and death. The blast flattened everything within miles. Entire families disappeared into ash. Japan was broken. Emperor Hirohito, facing annihilation, addressed his nation for the first time, announcing surrender on August 15, 1945. World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, was finally over. But the world was left asking, was it worth it? The bombings killed over 200,000 people, most of them civilians. Some argued it was necessary, that it ended the war and saved millions of lives that would have been lost in a full invasion. Others saw it as an unforgivable atrocity, a moment when humanity crossed a moral boundary from which it could never return. The images of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain carved in collective memory, a haunting reminder of both human genius and human cruelty. For the first time, mankind had created the power to destroy itself, and chose to use it. The consequences and moral debate over America's nuclear decision. The atomic bomb ended a war, but it also began an era of fear. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nations around the world raced to build their own nuclear arsenals. The Cold War emerged, built on the shadow of atomic power. Humanity had stepped into an age where destruction could come not from armies, but from buttons. For America, the decision to use nuclear weapons remains one of the most debated in history. Supporters claim it saved countless lives by avoiding a ground invasion. Critics argue it unleashed unnecessary suffering and set a dangerous precedent. Survivors of the bombings, the hibakusha, carried the scars for generations. Their voice is a testament to the horror of atomic warfare. Even today, the ethical questions linger. Could there have been another way? Was Japan already on the verge of surrender? Or was the bomb a message, not to Japan, but to the world, and especially the Soviet Union, about America's newfound power? What's certain is that the world after August 1945 was no longer the same. The nuclear age had begun, and with it came both peace through deterrence and fear through potential extinction. As the mushroom clouds faded, humanity was left staring into the abyss of its own creation. The decision that ended the war also reminded us that our greatest power carries our greatest responsibility. If this story made you reflect on history's most powerful moment, tell us your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in that room of decision makers? Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support more historical explorations like this one.